Greetings! So in today's video, we will be taking a look at these Oversize ceramic watercolor pans. Now, recently, Paul Rubens reached out to me to ask if I wanted to try their new super large ceramic paint pans. I was immediately intrigued. I am familiar with the concept of these oversized ceramic pans because we saw something similar from Winsor & Newton in the past and Bloch's. Since then, Winsor & Newton has stopped producing their large pans, which is a bit of a bummer, and Bloch's still makes theirs, but they're a bit difficult to find. In contrast, the Paul Rubens ones are really easy to find. You either go to their site or you use Amazon. So along with the ceramic pans, they also sent me a block of watercolor paper to try out because it's always good to have paper for the paints, you know? So I have this paper to test with the paints. As soon as I received the parcel, I sat down and checked it out. The first item I pulled out of the parcel is the paper block. It is a really nice size. It's quite big. It's larger than what I'm used to. I usually work in sketchbooks that are about 5 by 8 inches, and this is definitely larger, so that's going to be fun. I also really like the presentation. I think it's quite classy. As with most blocks like this, the paper is glued on all 4 sides, except for a really small area on one of the sides. There's an opening, and that's the way you can insert a tool to separate the pages. That's it when you're done with your painting. The main feature of a block is that it kind of holds your paper in place as you paint, so the paper, even if it buckles a bit when you paint, as it dries, it tends to dry straight. So that's the main advantage of a block. The pans come in this nice box that is really quite consistent with Paul Rubens' watercolor branding. It's this matte black with gold print. Inside, the pans are sort of shrink wrapped in place in the bottom of the box, so the whole bottom is shrink wrapped together. They seem to be a really nice, sturdy, rectangular ceramic dish. They don't feel flimsy at all. It's a straightforward design. It's really simple, and I like that because that way it's much easier to put them side by side. The bottom of the ceramic dish has a label to identify the color. I can reference the number with the number they have on their listing. They have photos of the products, and the photos have the number of the color, so you can sort of figure it out this way. All the pans come with the same presentation. Really, the only difference is the color in the pan. There is no obvious indicator of what's in the pan when you look at the box. So I chose 3 colors. I chose yellow lemon, Chinese red, and French blue. The yellow is number A233 within this range. It is made from pigment PY3. That specific pigment is named Hansa Yellow 10G, and on its own, it's quite a common pigment. The red is number B299 and pigment PR254, also named Purell Red, and the blue, my third color, is number B494, and that's French blue. It is pigment PB29, basically ultramarine blue. There are 3 other colors available. So you have color A475 that is named translucent turquoise, which is made from PB16, also known as phthalocyanine turquoise. This is particularly exciting. This is a great pigment that I know a lot of people really enjoy. Color A519 is named oriental green, and it is made from our old friend phthalocyanine green blue shade, or PG7. And lastly, color A297 is Prussian blue, made from pigment PB27, also named Prussian blue. So the first thing that I wanted to do was to swatch the colors, and then do some mixes with them. It's a fairly common trio of color when you look at it, but it's not one I'm all that familiar with. This is technically red, yellow, and blue, and as you guys know, I tend to reach more for a magenta, cyan, and yellow triad, but that was not an option here. So what I did is I started with the swatches, then I did a small little color wheel, and then I mixed some neutrals, and then I just mixed whatever was on my palette together and made swatches just to see what kind of color I can get by getting all 3 pigments working together. I also wanted to paint swatches of the 3 paints on black paper, mostly for fun, but also because I find it really interesting to see their level of transparency on a darker paper. When I was done with this first round of swatches, I decided I wanted to repeat the process basically basically, but on a different paper. So the first time I did this is a cellulose sketchbook, I think. So it's basically paper made from wood, pretty standard when it comes to paper, but for watercolor, cotton paper is more where it's at. So in my current sketchbook, I'm using cotton paper. So I decided to do the paint splashes again, but bigger, a color wheel, but bigger, and then do neutral mixes, but bigger. Bigger everything. I wanted to be able to really see what I can get from the paints because, like I said, not all that familiar with this trio of colors as it's not my main go-to. On this spread that you'll see, I also did a small test painting to test out stuff like layering, mixing, all that. So you'll be able to see all of that as I share my impressions on these paint pans. So the first thing that I really liked, and that is quite obvious, is the size of the pans. They are big. They are very big. That means that I have all the place I need to work my brush in the paint and not mess it up. The brush, I mean. If you're familiar with half pans, you've probably experienced the crater effect, where the middle of the pan gets used up first. And this is really ruinous on brushes, because when you work your brush in that small circular space, you destroy the point of the brush really quickly. It's far from ideal. Now, with a large ceramic pan that is supposed to be the size of 16 half pans, according to Paul Rubens, you just don't have that issue. And not only that, but it also accommodates larger brushes, which is great. Having a large brush and small half pans is not something that works, but in this case, you can really fit a large brush on this kind of pans. This is especially good if you like to paint large paintings or large areas or both. And one last thing that I really enjoyed about the size of the pans is that you have plenty of room to have a messy area and a clean area. So when I paint, I tend to not rinse off my brush every time I'm working on a mix. Like, to get it to the color that I want, I will go back and pick up more color to put in the mix. So I always end up with dirty pans, especially half pans. You don't have a lot of room over there to keep a section clean and have a section that is dirty. So it's a hassle with a regular half pan. But here, that's not an issue. I can have half of this pan be messy and half be clean, and that's still plenty of space to really work without having to clean up my paints. And then the mixes. So this triad of color makes for muted mixes when it comes to the secondary colors. I really like the oranges, greens, and purples we can get from mixing. They are a bit limited, but they're also very natural looking. So you would not be able to mix a pink or a cyan color from these, but you will get very, very natural looking greens, and the oranges are really nice as well. I'm also quite fond of the nice dark gray or black color you can get when combining all three paints. It's not that difficult to get to the neutral. I feel like it's a mix that demands a bit more blue than the other color, but it's really easy to mix and it works really well. The one pigment of these three that is known to be granulating, PBE29, so the blue, is milled really smooth in this case, and it doesn't really bring that much texture into the mixed colors. The somewhat negative observations that I've made, or perhaps neutral observations would be more accurate. There's really nothing negative to say about these paints on their own, but there's a few general things that I would like to note overall. First, and obviously, there are limited colors available. The selection at the point of making this video doesn't really offer a cyan, a magenta, or a black color, and none of the colors are particularly dark in value, so there's not an easy option for monochromatic studies. I really love the colors that they offer, but at the same time, they're not the most versatile. The second thing that I wanted to mention is also very evident, but these paints don't really come with storage or mixing space. You need a separate mixing area to, well, make your mixes. You might think this is a non-issue, as we have the same things to deal with when buying any single pan of any size. It just feels different here because of the way these just are. Most pans, you buy them, you plop them in a tin, and then you have storage and mixing area all at once. With this type of ceramic large pans, you have to think a bit harder and a bit outside of the box. There are no ready-made storage options for pans that are this large, I'm not sure I'm explaining this well or coherently. I hope this makes sense. Basically, if you get any kind of large ceramic pans, you also need to think about how you will use them on your workspace and how you will store them when you're done, basically. With most other pans, like half pans and full pans, you can find a tin for them really easily. And finally, a last little detail, but these come with a somewhat rough ceramic bottom. I think it's like not glazed. I'm not familiar really with the ceramic terminology, but it's quite rough. So I would suggest putting some sort of felt pads or a felt lining under the pan. It's just more agreeable this way. They don't end up scraping on the surface when you move them around, and you can stack them more easily because there's this little buffer from the felt pads. So yeah. Overall, do I recommend these? I do. I really like them, and I feel like if it's something that would work with the way you paint, you could definitely benefit from one of these. For example, if you use a lot of one of these colors, like you use a lot of BB29, the French blue, or ultramarine blue, it's definitely a great deal to get this much paint at once. It's consistent. You don't have to deal with batches. You don't have to deal with stock. You're set up for a really long time. They are definitely not travel friendly, so more for studio practice. But yeah, you get a lot of paint at a really good price. The paints themselves are nice and smooth, and they are easy to re-wet. They mix well. They're really fun to work with. They have a really strong pigmentation. And I haven't forgotten about the paper pad. I will be making a separate video where I try it out. Let me know if there's anything in particular that you'd like to see me paint with these colors on the paper block. I felt a bit too intimidated to go at it right away, but now that I've done all the swatches, all the mixing, a little test painting, I feel good about painting on the paper block. I'll have links to these in the description if you want to check them out. And also big thanks to Paul Rubens for sending me these paints, and a thank you to you for watching this video. Again, let me know if you have any painting suggestion in the comments. See ya all really soon. Take care. Bye bye.